Question: is it possible to buy your way to victory in the Champions League? If a team spends enough money on superstar players, will they win the title? I asked this question because back in 2001, someone actually did. Real Madrid bought themselves possibly the greatest super team to ever play on a football field. And they were immediately repaid by winning the Champions League a few months later. This led to a major change in the world of football's transfer strategy, and since then, many teams have tried the same strategy, bringing a pair of superstars together for an instant path to success. But despite having several superstars together, it doesn't guarantee anything. In fact, these projects often fail spectacularly. And even Messi couldn't make it work. In 2021, Paris Saint-Germain made Lionel Messi an offer to become part of perhaps the biggest super team in football history. Come and play alongside Neymar and Kylian Mbappe to finally bring the Champions League trophy to PSG. And since Messi had already done it with Neymar and Luis Suarez a few years earlier, it felt like they were going to pull it off. And remember, League One was not the goal, it was the Champions League. The dominance in League One was certain. But in the Champions League, that is a completely different story. After only finishing second in their group, they were set to face Real Madrid in the round of 16. And when they took a 1-0 lead in the home game, it all looked like a very good starting point before the second leg at the Santiago Bernabeu. And when, after just 38 minutes, Mbappe scores to give PSG a 2-0 lead, I remember that I asked myself, can they really knock out the champions in the Champions League in the first round? Well, after being completely crushed in less than 15 minutes, PSG gave up. Although Real Madrid became the champions team that year, this was only the case for this team. 2 seasons later, and the super team project at PSG is a bust. The club is now looking for a brand new team, as everything seems to be blowing up. But this is not the only team that was assembled from superstars and failed miserably. Real Madrid's major strategy since the early 1910s has been signing the biggest players the world had ever seen and riding on their talents and superstardom to success. Players such as Alfredo Di Stefano, Ferenc Puskas, who scored so many beautiful goals that they had to rename the award for the most beautiful goal after him, Zinedine Zidane, and most of the time it did work. But in 2009, they faced a big problem. Barcelona had dominated the world of football, and Real Madrid's management had grown impatient. Messi, Puyol, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Zlatan, Henry, with the greatest manager of all time. These men were running riot in European competitions and in La Liga. So what was Real Madrid going to do? They went galactic again. In the same transfer window, they did Cristiano Ronaldo and Karim Benzema, 2 of the best young players in the world. Kaká, one of the world's best attacking midfielders, joined them. Xavi Alonso, one of the best central midfielders in the world. All this to make sure for certain that they would retake the La Liga back from Barcelona and go on an incredible run in the competition as they used to do in years past. And the result? They blew it away. Another second-place finish behind Barcelona. And worse, they saw Barcelona win the Champions League again. And of course, the fans, the club, and the president blamed the manager, Manuel Pellegrini, for failing to do anything with the super team and sacked him, leading to one of his most epic quotes. "It's no good having an orchestra with the 10 best guitarists if I don't have a pianist. Real Madrid has the best guitarists, but if I ask them to play piano, they won't be able to do it so well." But this is not the first time Real Madrid tried to buy themselves a title. After the success in 2001, Real Madrid was going for the same strategy 2 years later. At the first game of the season, Real Madrid started a team that would go on to get their own nickname, the Galacticos. Now take a look at this picture. I'll give you 3 seconds to guess the names in this team. You got them? On the same pitch, Raul, Ronaldo, Figo, Makelele, Zidane, Roberto Carlos, Pavon, Elguera, Salgado, Casillas. And lastly, they added the last piece to the puzzle, one of the most well-known names in the whole world, David Beckham. This team is only possible to gather together while playing FIFA, and there's a reason for that. In their first and second seasons together, they could only manage second and fourth place finishes in La Liga, and in the Champions League, they never got past the quarter-finals in their whole time together. The Galacticos were just a gathering of big names. And speaking of big names, it reminds me of the Spanish national team, which in 2014 assembled the greatest gallery of superstars probably ever seen by a Spanish side. And the reason was to defend the title from 4 years earlier. We're talking about names like Pedro, David Silva, Iniesta, Xavi, Fabregas, Alba, Busquets, Xabi Alonso, Ramos, Casillas. I mean, they were the overwhelming favourite, and were going to win every game. It's that simple, isn't it? What? They couldn't even make it through the group stage? Wins just one match against Group Jumbo Australia? Looking back, their most memorable moment in that World Cup was a goal scored against them. Through the years, we've seen many national teams fail to bring the World Cup title back-to-back. But in May 2002, we saw a French team who were leading the FIFA World Power Rankings ahead of the World Cup. And not just that, they had been the #1 ranked team for 2 years straight. They were the big favourites. Players like Thierry Henry, Zinedine Zidane, Marcel Desailly, Lilian Thuram, Patrick Vieira, and David Trezeguet should have just walked the park. But in the first game, we could see the coming of something really shocking. Ouch. But okay, that's just one game, all good. They can still get back into this. They came dead last in their group. They failed to score a single goal in the tournament. The fans were furious and asked for the players to never wear the jersey. Not a single goal. That's embarrassing. But not scoring a goal is one thing. Getting relegated, that is a whole other level. The 2004-05 season was a wild season in Italian football. The Calciopoli scandal was front and center of everything that season. Juventus were the big boss in the league at the time and were involved in match fixing. So was AC Milan, who had built a super team earlier to try to take down Juventus to no avail. It took Juventus being stripped of their title for Milan's super team to finally win the Serie A. But there was another problem. Juventus said, if I'm going down, we're all going down. And then they name-dropped AC Milan as part of the scandal. Investigators discovered that Milan had a small role, and again, the Milan super team would fail to best Juventus. But it got worse. Milan was struggling to best Juventus in the Serie A, but they managed to hold sway over the UEFA Champions League that season. Heck, the early 2000s belonged to Milan in the Champions League. I remember them playing almost every single final. In 2005, they went all the way to the final and came up against Liverpool. By the second half, the AC Milan super team were 3 goals up. The Champions League title was theirs. Oh wait, there is something missing here.
Equalised for Liverpool. Oh, saved by Dina Xabi Alonso! And mission impossible is accomplished. Liverpool were 3-0 down 5 minutes ago.
That has to be the greatest comeback ever. But for these guys, not only did they lose the Serie A title, but they lost the Champions League too. And next season, they started with an 8-point deduction. It doesn't get much worse than this for super teams. Well, there's Bayern Munich in 2011 to 2012 who saw rock bottom but immediately adjusted the following season. But their 2011 to 12 story is one that any coach thinking of a super team needs to understand. You see, Bayern have a habit of buying the best players in the German Bundesliga. As far as the league goes, they are an all-star team. They pick the best players from the smaller clubs in the league and bring them together to form one super team every season, so that they can absolutely dominate. In 2011 to 12, they had Thomas Müller, Jerome Boateng, Mario Gomez, Toni Kroos, Frank Ribery, Arjen Robben, Philipp Lahm, Manuel Neuer and a few others, and were managed by the legendary Jupp Heynckes. For a time, in early 2012, it looked as though Bayern Munich were destined to win everything there was for them to win. But a certain Jurgen Klopp said, no. And so, Klopp and his Borussia Dortmund team went neck and neck with Bayern in the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal and the Champions League. When it looked like they were on their way to a treble, it all fell apart. The Bundesliga was the first to get away from them. A slip-up saw Dortmund beat them to the title by 8 points. They were also piped to the Pokal by Dortmund thanks to Robert Lewandowski netting a hat-trick in the Berlin final to grab the title. But it was their failure in the Champions League that really stung. Being the club whose home stadium is the host of a Champions League final and getting to the final is a rarity. But Bayern did it. They were literally at home in the final when Chelsea came to town with dreams of European glory. 7 minutes in, Thomas Müller scored, giving the fans hope that their super team was finally going to win something, only for Didier Drogba to pop up and equalize in the 88th minute. They lost that final on penalties and their season officially crumbled. Imagine being an entertaining side who could not even get to the final of any competition. But when we talk about winning, have you seen this video?